I think that Inside Out 2 illustrates this rupture to rapture sequence perfectly. And I want to be clear, I don't want you, when I'm talking about this, I don't want you to be thinking about the emotions as distinct beings who control Riley, you know, in headquarters. I don't want you to think of them as emotions themselves. And, you know, I want to say it's from a psychoanalytical perspective, but when I've read books from psychologists, I never can remember what their, like, you know, background actually is. There's so many words. But I know in the Wild Woman book, as well as in the Uses of Enchantment, he talked about, specifically regarding fairy tales and other myths, that every character in a story just represents an aspect of a single person's psyche. At least this is a way of looking at it. And I thought this was fantastic. I thought this was so interesting. So every time you read a fairy tale or anything like that, every character within that story is actually just representing different facets of a single person's psyche. And I thought this was so beautiful for a lot of reasons, but also because, you know, you can hear a lot of talk about fairy tales and the happily ever after and the princess who gets saved by the Prince Charming and they get married and live happily ever after or whatever. But when you view it like this, as the female and the male, or feminine and masculine aspects of a single person's psyche reuniting and almost again representing that intangible center or an integration, I think that is such a beautiful, beautiful way of looking at it. So I want you to keep that in mind, that these emotions, joy, it's joy, sadness, anger, whoever, anxiety, that these are not the emotions themselves all in headquarters controlling Riley and she's a victim of it. They are facets of her identity, but she is still in control of all of them. They are just segmented aspects of Riley. Think of it like that. And another point that I want to make here is in Inside Out 2, the front runners are joy and anxiety. And if you view them not as the emotions themselves, bickering and fighting and causing pain within the person and they're a victim of it, you view them as representations of Riley fighting with herself. They are two facets of Riley representing the ambivalence going on in Riley. And what did I say earlier in this episode? That rupture isn't what breaks you, ambivalence is. In this movie, Riley needs to rupture, but she ignores it, right? She is rupturing, she's growing up, things are changing, and she's resisting it. She's resisting the unknown, and she's clinging to the aspects of her that she does know, that are reliable, that make her feel safe, that she leans on, and that create her reality and her identity, her sense of belonging, her sense of, you know, safety, whatever, right? She needs to rupture. Her life is rupturing, but she ignores it. She won't let her experience be birthed through her. She's resisting this ego death. And you see this in moments like in the car with her friends when she finds out that they won't be going to the same school as her. When she gets overexcited when she meets Val. When she gets in trouble from the coach in front of the team because her and her friends are goofing off. When she hears the other players complaining about her on the benches. When she doesn't make the team. All examples of her moments where she needs to rupture, is going to rupture one way or the other, whether you resist it or not, rupture is coming. But she doesn't allow herself to. She is avoiding rupture. She's denying her reality and she gets disoriented, and this grows. This disorientation grows and grows and grows. This storm gets stronger and stronger and stronger. She thinks she needs to accomplish certain things or act in certain ways that is going to fix everything. Control. She's holding on rather than letting go. And she becomes so dysregulated to the point where she cannot hold it back any longer. Fragmentation is happening rather than integration. And she reaches the point where her world feels upside down and she has to admit it. And that is something I think I talked about in last season, was you get to the point where you cannot resist it and you have to succumb. You feel like you have to give up. You shrug your shoulders. You say, what can I do? I'm fed up. I'm sick of this. What else can I do? Like a sense of helplessness. But it's funny because in this sense of helplessness or hopelessness, not always, but oftentimes it's actually just a moment of knowing that you're not in control. It's not actually like you have nothing, you're done for. It's just a feeling of, okay, I have no control. You're admitting that you have no control. You no longer have any option to deny the rupture. You've had your chances, you've denied it enough. It just isn't going anywhere anymore. And at this moment in the movie, Riley has a panic attack. And what happens? all of these suppressed memories come flooding back in that she's been running from, specifically over the last few weeks, but even, years. She is in the throes of rupture. Now, I don't think you have to meet this point to go through rupture, but when we are afraid of death and we're afraid of rupture and we deny, which is so much of what we're focusing on in the first season, how we're denying our reality and how this causes a rupture like this. It causes so much unnecessary pain. Such a human experience. We do this so much because we are so fearful of death and we avoid it so much rather than embracing it. This almost becomes necessary, if that makes sense. It becomes unavoidable because of the way that we handle it. So Riley is in rupture, and in a rupture that's not going anywhere. She has no option at this point. So how is she going to handle it? And note that this can still go in multiple directions, right? Riley doesn't have to embrace it the way she does, right? There are a lot of ways still to handle it at this point. And I think a lot of the time when a lot of us come to this point where we can't deny it and we're in such a deep rupture, we just cling tighter to the rupture and make it a part of our identity. So once that initial attack, that panic attack is over, we don't actually learn and integrate further there. We just use that as another, I don't want to say excuse, but another reason to avoid it because it's dysfunction, it's scary, it's bad, it hurts, I don't want it. So rather than integrate, we actually just fragment more. But luckily, this movie is a positive example of how to handle this. So how does she handle it? How does Riley handle it as she's going through this panic attack, through this rupture on steroids? We go into the representations of Riley, and there they are again in HQ, all of her emotions. I think this is so beautiful here, right? There is a fragmentation here because some of the emotions are ejected, a great deal of them in the second movie are ejected from headquarters. And there's this fragmentation of her psyche. Rather than all the aspects working together, they are fragmented, they're separated, they're not working together any longer, and they get sent out, and Riley loses them. She doesn't have access to these things, and a few specific ones are in hyperdrive, controlling everything, and there's a lack of balance here. In this moment, you go back into headquarters, and now, finally, they are all back together. That fragmentation, here's an opportunity for there to be integration, right? All of the emotions, all the facets of her identity are back together. And Joy sees anxiety and tries to help, right? Rather than fighting against each other like they have been. Anxiety realizes that she's done wrong. She realizes that she can't do it on her own, that she needs help. And Joy, although feeling angry at first and tries to snatch up anxiety and can't, she still cannot control her. She softens and witnesses anxiety and tries to help her. And they finally listen to one another, and they see one another, and they realize their dependence on one another. And Riley, through the facet of sadness, calls Joy forward, the one that anxiety has been overpowering or tricking or pushing away, that Riley has been pushing away. She's called forward. And then Riley begins to tap into her internal experience again. And as soon as Joy, the one missing in this story, touches the controls, Riley softens. And you can see this on the outside by how her body starts to change. She begins to process. The backlog starts to, drip through, and it's not as clogged anymore. She admits her experience, she faces herself, and she's being vulnerable. And in this moment, her true friends, right, the people who truly know her and have been her friends for a long time, witness her. They see her and they come to her. And Riley faces her behavior. She witnesses herself honestly, without shame. She verbalizes her experience and takes ownership over him. She can name the emotion she felt and apologize. And after that, she comes out of the penalty box, literal and metaphorical, the literal penalty box in the movie, but also a metaphorical mental penalty box, and is immersed in her sensory, present moment experience again. And she can feel the things that she loves. Her skates on the ice, the hockey stick against the puck, her friend's presence and laughter, she taps in. In doing so, she consents to experience life again and the joy of being alive and feeling okay. And that is an experience of rapture.